and partially it is supplied by ovarian arteries. Other than the uterus, uterine artery also supplies the part of vagina, medial two-thirds of uterine tube, ovaries, lower portion of ureter, and structures which are present in the broad ligament. Now here you can see how the uterine artery enters into the lower part of broad ligament by crossing the ureter in front, and then it runs along the lateral border of the uterus. Follow the lower border of the uterine tube, and here it ends by anastomosis with the ovarian artery. In its course, if you see, it gives various branches which supplies the different part of the uterus like fundus, body, and the cervix. And it is tortuous artery, one of the example of the tortuous artery, like a splenic artery. So this tortuosity of the uterine artery allows the expansion of uterus during pregnancy. With the venous drainage, uterine vein drains into the internal iliac vein. Internal iliac vein joined with the external iliac vein, and which ultimately form the common iliac vein, and ultimately drain in the inferior vena cava. Now, very important about the lymphatic drainage of the uterus, different part of the uterus. See, before that, it forms the plexuses. Lymphatic capillaries will form the plexus. This plexus lies just within the mucosa. That is called the submucosal plexus. Within the muscular wall, intramuscular, and just beneath the serosa, subserosal plexus. And then this plexus is drained by the various nodes like the pre-aortic node, para-aortic node, the nodes surrounding the aorta, internal iliac nodes surround the internal iliac vessel, external iliac nodes, superficial inguinal nodes, and obturator nodes. So this is the lymphatic drainage of the different part of the uterus. I see the lymphatics from the fundus and the upper part of the body. The demarcating line is this one. This portion will drain into the pre-aortic and para-aortic nodes. Then the lymphatic from the lower part of the body, they drain into the external iliac nodes. And the lymphatic from the cervix, they drain into the sacral nodes, external iliac node, obturator nodes. So the lymphatics from the cervix will be drained by different group of lymph node, and that's why the carcinoma of the cervix that spreads through these lymphatics. Then the lymphatics from the lateral cornu, lateral angle, supply the autonomic nervous system, sympathetic and parasympathetic. 1 minute. Now am I audible clearly? अभी मेरी आवाज आ रही है आपको? अभी आ रही है आवाज? हेलो, अभी भी नहीं आ रही? I think there is a problem in net connection. Okay, okay. So let me continue. So the sympathetic supply comes from T12 to L1, and it is vasomotor in function. It leads to constriction of blood vessels. It stimulates uterine contraction, and it will carry the painful sensation from the body of uterus. Parasympathetic supply comes from S2, S3, and S4 segments, and its action is just reverse than the sympathetic. It is vasodilator, and it inhibits the uterine musculature, and it will carry the painful sensation from the cervix. But the role of autonomic nervous system, it depends on hormonal control also. The all the changes like uterine contraction, vasoconstriction, vasodilatation, that mostly under the hormonal control. The role of autonomic nervous system is very less. Now there are list of applied aspects which are given in your textbook. These are in the form of congenital anomalies, retroversion, retroflexion of uterus, prolapse of uterus, cesarean section performed, hysterosalpingography, intrauterine contraceptive device, which is used for family control or family planning, fibroid of uterus, hysterectomy, and placenta previa. I may not go in detail of every conditions, every clinical aspect. Let me show you the diagram of certain clinical aspects. These are the fibroid of uterus or leiomyoma of uterus. This is the mass which derived from the smooth muscle tissues of the wall of the uterus. And there are various subdivision of it depending upon the location, like submucosal leiomyoma or submucosal fibroid, interstitial fibroid, subserosal fibroid. It comprises the uterine lining, that is endometrium, and that resulting in the ischemia and the inflammation. Carcinoma of the cervix, which is a malignant neoplasia derived from the cells of the cervix, and most common cause of the by human papilloma virus, HPV virus. Colposcopy, again, it is a diagnostic procedure which is used to examine to visualize the cervix and the vagina and vulva with the help of magnified view with the help of the microscope. This is known as colposcopy. Colpus means vagina and scopy means to visualize. Prolapse of uterus, that is downward displacement of the uterus from its anatomical position. Here you can see. And most common cause is the trauma occurs during the childbirth, particularly in the multiple birth or in case of the difficult birth. Examination of the pelvic cavity or pelvis are of the two type: external examination, which just include the examination of any skin lesion, and internal examination is done by with the help of speculum or bimanual internal examination. What is bimanual internal examination? One hand is put above the pubic symphysis and the two finger is inserted through the vagina, and you can palpate the outline of the uterus with help of the hand above the pubic symphysis. So this technique is called the bimanual technique for the examination of the uterus. Now the uterine tube or fallopian tube, which can be asked as a short note, morphological features of the fallopian tube. It is a long tortuous tube extending from the lateral cornua of the uterus laterally, around 10 to 12 centimeter long, lies in the upper free border of the broad ligament. What are the functions of uterine tube? You must be knowing it carries oocytes from the ovaries to the fertilization site, which takes place in the ampulla of the uterine tube. It also carries the sperms from the uterus to the fertilization site. It conveys dividing zygote to the uterine cavity, and it acts as a communication between the peritoneal cavity and exterior of the body. So these are the various functions of the uterine tubes. Now, which are the morphological parts of the uterine tube? Very, very important. It can be asked in your viva also. So from medial to lateral, it will be divided into four parts. The part which lies within the wall of the uterus, that is intramural. Mural means within the muscular tissue. Lateral to it is the isthmus. Longest portion is the ampulla, and lateralmost end is called the infundibulum. So from the medial to laterally, it will be divided into four parts: intramural part, isthmus, ampulla, and infundibulum. Now let us see the each part one by one. First, infundibulum, which is the lateral end of the uterine tube. See this end, and it covers the. It is the funnel-shaped end, and it covers the ovary, and it has various finger-like projection. Here you can see the finger-like projections, and one or two projections are very long, and these are known as fimbria. So fimbria is one of the longest finger-like projection of the infundibulum. What is the function of this fimbria? During ovulation, it traps the oocytes from the ovary. As soon as the ovary releases the oocyte, this fimbria or finger-like projection will trap the ovum or oocyte. Then it opens into the peritoneal cavity through the abdominal ostium or abdominal os. Next to it is the ampulla, the portion which lies medial to the infundibulum. It is dilated, tortuous, and thin-walled portion. It is around the 6 to 7 centimeter long, and which forms the two-third part of the uterine tube. So longest part of the uterine tube is the ampulla, and it is the site for the fertilization. Fertilization of the ovum and the sperm takes place into the ampulla. Second is also a most common site for the ectopic pregnancy. So the implantation which occurs outside the uterine cavity, that is called the ectopic pregnancy. So most common site is the ampulla. It arches over the upper pole of the ovary, both the ovary. Next to it or medial to the ampulla, there is isthmus. It is 2.5 centimeter long. It is short, narrow, thick walled, and it enters onto the lateral cornea of the uterus. It is cord-like structure, that is isthmus. And the last one is the intramural part, the part which enters into the myometrium or the muscular wall of the uterus, that is called the intramural or the uterine part. It opens via the uterine ostium into the uterine cavity. So the uterine tube, medially it communicates with the uterine cavity, and laterally it opens into the peritoneal cavity. Blood supply. The medial two-third portion is supplied by the uterine artery. See here. This is the uterine artery. And the lateral one-third portion is supplied by the ovarian artery. Can you tell me the ovarian artery is a branch of, it comes from which artery? Anyone? As I mentioned earlier, the uterine artery is a branch of internal iliac artery. So this ovarian artery comes from? Nobody knows. That gonadal vessels or gonadal arteries, either testicular artery or ovarian artery. It's a branch of which artery? Anybody? Yes, एक ने लिखा है aorta, but he is not sure. Okay, so this gonadal artery, whether it is testicular artery or ovarian artery, it's a branch of abdominal aorta. Okay, so the lateral one third of the uterine tube is supplied by the ovarian artery, and its corresponding veins drains into the uterine vein and the ovarian vein. Nerve supply, sympathetic supply comes from T10 to L2 segment, which is vasomotor in function, and parasympathetic supply comes from S2, S3, S4. It inhibits the peristalsis, it inhibits the movement of uterine tube, and it is vasodilator. Lymphatic drainage, lymph from the uterine tube drains into the aortic group of the lymph node. Applied aspect about the uterine tube in the form of infection, which is or inflammation, which is called the salpingitis, infertility, hysterosalpingography, tubal inflammation test, or tubal ligation. So let us see pyosalpinx or salpingitis. Here you can see the uterine tube is full of the pus. So the infection or inflammatory condition related with the uterine tube is called the salpingitis. Ectopic pregnancy, instead of implantation of the zygote within the uterine cavity, if the implantation takes place outside the uterine cavity, then this condition is known as ectopic pregnancy. Ectopic means outside. The most common site for the ectopic pregnancy is in the ampulla of the uterine tube. Tubectomy, it's one of the method of the family planning. Here the uterine tube first are cut apart and then both the ends are tied up. So this is the method used for the family planning. Infertility, inability to have a child. That clinical condition is known as infertility, and most common cause for the infertility in female is the blockage of the uterine tube, whether it is due to infection or inflammation or collection of pus or any other mechanical obstruction. In this condition, the patency of the tube can be tested by one test which is known as Rubin's test or tuber inflammation test. So what is this test? See, here it is shown that one cannula is inserted through the vagina into the uterine cavity, right? And then air is injected into the uterine cavity. And as we know, the medial end of the uterine tube enters or communicates with the uterine cavity. So this air is projected then into the both uterine tube and it comes out through the abdominal ostium and the air enters into the peritoneal cavity. So, and then the bubbling sound are auscultated over the both iliac fossa. If both the uterine tube are patent, if the sound are absent, that means there is a blockage within the either in the uterine cavity or in the uterine tube. This test is known as Rubin's test or tuber inflammation test, and this test is done immediately after the menstruation. Now the radiological procedure which is used for the position of the uterus as well as fallopian tube, that is known as hysterosalpingography. Hystera means uterus, the word which is used for the uterus. Salpinx means tube. So uterine tube as well as uterus is examined via the radiological procedure. That procedure is known as hysterosalpingography. What is done in this radiological procedure? One cannula is inserted through the vagina into the uterine cavity, and then we will inject the radio opaque dye or radio opaque material, and then X-ray is taken, and the dye which is used is the radio opaque, so that fill the uterine cavity as well as it passes through the uterine tube and spill out in the peritoneal cavity. So when you take a X-ray after injecting the radio opaque material, you will see the radio opaque outline of the uterus, as well as you will see the outline of the uterine tube. And if there is spillage of dye in the peritoneal cavity, that means both the uterine tube are patent. And you can see the anatomical position of the uterus also. So this is the most common procedure which is used for the examination of the uterus as well as for the fallopian tube. By this X-ray or by this procedure, HSG procedure, you can make out the any congenital anomaly. As it is seen here, it is bicornuate uterus. Here you can see the double cornue of the uterus, which is one of the congenital anomalies. So that's all about the uterine tube. Now the ovaries. Ovaries also can be asked as a short note, morphological features of the ovaries. Then the boundaries of the ovarian fossa can be asked in your MCQ as well as for the one-liner question. So these are the female gonads present on either side of the uterus. In the ovarian fossa, as I told you, it lies on the posterior aspects of the broad ligaments in the lateral pelvic wall. So you keep both the ovaries posteriorly so that you can determine the anterior surface as well as posterior surface of the uterus by just seeing the position of the ovary. Its length is around 3 centimeter, width is around 1.5 centimeter, and thickness is 1 centimeter. Now it lies in the lateral pelvic wall in particular area, and that area is known as ovarian fossa. Here you can see the rounded area surrounding the ovaries. This is the ovarian fossa. So what are the boundaries of the ovarian fossas? See, if you note down, this is the urinary bladder and this is the position of ureter, right? And from above here, the external iliac artery crosses the ureter. This is the internal iliac artery. Anteriorly, this is the cut section of pubic symphysis, and posteriorly, this one is the sacrum. So let us see the boundaries of the ovarian fossa. Anteriorly, it is bounded by the obliterated umbilical artery. If you trace this artery posteriorly and above, it comes from the internal iliac artery. So anteriorly by the obliterated umbilical artery, above by the external iliac artery, behind by the internal iliac artery and ureter. Immediately behind the ovary there is ureter, and just posterior to the ureter there is internal iliac artery. So in front by the obliterated umbilical artery, above by the external iliac artery, and behind by the internal iliac artery and ureter. And within the floor of the ovarian fossa, there is a passage of obturator nerves and vessels as it enters into the obturator canal. And just outside the obturator nerves and vessel, there lies obturator internus muscle with covering fascia. So floor of the ovarian fossa is formed by the obturator internus muscle, obturator nerve and vessels. So these are the boundaries of ovarian fossa. Now external features of the morphological features of the ovary. If you see the surface and color of the ovary, these are different in the young person as well as in the old person. See, in the young person, if you see the margins of the ovaries, these are smooth margin, and ovaries are pink in color, and it located in the vertical axis. So it has upper pole as well as the lower pole because it lies vertically. While in case of the older person, ovary lies horizontally, having a medial pole and the lateral pole. And if you see the margin are wavy or puckered margin, and it becomes grayish in color. So these are the difference between the young ovary and the old ovary. Then the other morphological features. See, these morphological features are described according to the young ovaries. It is ovoid in shape, having a two-pole upper pole, which is also called the tubal pole because it is related with the uterine tube, and the lower pole, which is called the uterine pole. Two borders, anterior and posterior borders, and two surfaces, medial and lateral surfaces. Now let us see the relations of the upper pole. See the location it lies vertically, almost vertically. Upper pole is called tubal pole. It is covered by the ovarian fimbria, and it gives the attachment of suspensory ligament of ovary, extending from the upper pole of the ovary to the lateral pelvic wall. And this is also called the infundibulopelvic ligament. And if you remember, it is one of the part of the or one of the subdivision of the broad ligament. Then the lower pole, which is also called the uterine pole because it is related with the uterus. It gives the attachment of ovarian ligament or ligament of ovary. See, the both ligament are different, suspensory ligament of ovary as well as ligament of ovary. So the ovarian ligament extends from the lower pole of the ovary to the lateral cornea of the uterus. Then the relations of the lateral surface. Here you can see the ovarian fossa. Then if you see the floor of the ovarian fossa is formed by the obturator nerves and vessels. See, these are the obturator vessels and nerves. And just outside it there lies obturator internus muscle and with covering fascia. So lateral surface come in contact with the ovarian fossa, floor of the ovarian fossa, which is related to the parietal peritoneum, obturator internus muscle with its fascia, and obturator nerves and vessels. Medial surface, which is seen here. See, this whole one is the medial surface, and in the upper part of the medial surface is overlapped by the uterine tube, infundibulum of the uterine tube. Now two borders. There are two borders, anterior and the posterior border. Anterior border is also called the meso-ovarian border. If you remember, one of the part of the broad ligament attached to the ovary, that is called the meso-ovarium. So the anterior border gives the attachment of double layered fold of the peritoneum, that is meso-ovarium. And that's why this border is called the meso-ovarian border. This meso-ovarium acts as a hilum. It gives passage of the ovarian vessels and nerves, as well as lymphatics. So which border is the meso-ovarian border? It is the anterior border. Remember this name. The anterior border acts as a hilum because it gives the attachment of double layer fold of the peritoneum, that is meso-ovarium. Then the posterior border is a free border. Here you can see this is the posterior border. It does not give the attachment of any peritoneal fold. It is the free border. And the posterior border, again, it is related with the uterine tube. And more posteriorly, it is related with the ureter and the internal iliac vessels. So if you remember the posterior boundaries of the ovarian fossa. So which are the parts of the ovaries covered by the uterine tube? Overall, uterine tube or the infundibulum or the fimbria of the ovary covers the upper pole, that is uterine pole of the ovary. It covers the posterior border as well as it covers the upper part of the medial surface. So all these three parts are covered by the uterine tube. So that's all about the morphological features of the ovary. and its relations, important structural relations. Now blood supply. It is supplied by ovarian artery, which comes from abdominal aorta. Ovarian vein, uh, just like a testicular vein, it formed by the pampiniform plexus, and then it drain into. What is the draining area of the testicular vein? You have already done in the testis, morphological features of the testis, right? So where it drain? Testicular vein drains into what? What is the venous drainage of the testicular testis? Anybody? टेस्टिकुलर वेन किस में ड्रेन होती है? Yes, right testicular vein drains into inferior vena cava, and left one, left renal vein. So just like that, this ovarian vein drains on the right side. It directly drains into the inferior vena cava, and on the left side, it drains into the left renal vein. Nerve supply, sympathetic supply comes from T10 and T11 segment, parasympathetic from the vagus, and lymphatic drains into the lateral aortic group of the lymph node. Now the applied aspect, inflammation of the ovary. This leads to the peritonitis of the ovarian fossa, and if you see the ovarian fossa floor, leads to the irritation of the obturator nerve, and it leads to the radiating pain on the medial side of the thigh as well as over the hip area. Now the ovulatory pain or ovulation pain. This pain or this syndrome is called the Mitchell-Merz syndrome, and the pain radiates along the T10 segments of the spinal cord to the para-umbilical region. So Mitchell-Merz syndrome. The Mitchell means middle and Merz means pain. Pain occurs at the midpoint of the menstrual cycle. That is ovulatory pain due to the ovulation. So the girl feel the pain at the midpoint of the menstrual cycle. That syndrome is called the Mitchell-Merz syndrome, and the pain radiate particularly around the T10 dermatome around the umbilicus. Ovarian cyst, here you can see ovary, and that is due to the developmental arrest of the ovarian follicle, one of the stage of the ovarian follicle. Accessory ovaries may be present in the mesoovarium or in any part of the broad ligament of the uterus. The one clinical condition is the carcinoma of the ovary. It's around 20% of the gynecological cancers is related with the carcinoma of the ovary. Teratoma of the ovary, which contains derivatives of all the three germ layers: ectoderm, endoderm, and mesoderm. And here you can see the ovarian carcinoma. So this is all about the uterine tube and the ovary. And these are the short notes which can be asked in your exam about the female reproductive organs. You can enter your roll number and you can note down these short notes: supports of uterus, morphological features of uterus, ovaries, and uterine tubes. Any query regarding this topic?